The will was read at 3 p.m. on Tuesday. Victoria Kent would inherit everything: the mansion, the businesses, the fortune. By Thursday morning, she was found dead in her locked bedroom. The killer? Someone she called family. Welcome back to Crime Secrets, where we uncover the hidden truths that families don't want you to know. Today's case isn't just about murder. It's about greed, betrayal, and a family secret that had been festering for over 15 years. This is the story of Victoria Kent, the golden girl who had everything and the person closest to her who took it all away. What you're about to hear will make you question everyone you trust. Victoria Alexandra Kent was born on March 8, 2001, into one of Connecticut's most prominent families. The Kents weren't just wealthy, they were American royalty. Her great-grandfather, Theodore Kent, had built a shipping empire in the 1920s that grew into a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate spanning real estate, technology, and international trade. Victoria grew up in the family's 47-room mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. But despite her privileged background, those who knew her described her as surprisingly down-to-earth. She attended Phillips Academy, Andover, where she excelled academically and was known for her charitable work. Unlike many trust fund kids, Victoria actually cared about the family business and spent her summers learning every aspect of Kent Industries. By her 21st birthday, in March 2022, Victoria had already shown remarkable business acumen. She'd successfully negotiated 2 major acquisitions for the company and had modernized their digital infrastructure, saving millions in operational costs. Her grandfather, Charles Kent, the family patriarch, was so impressed that he'd begun grooming her to take over the entire empire. But here's where the story takes its first dark turn. Victoria wasn't supposed to be the heir. According to the original family trust established in 1953, inheritance was meant to follow traditional male lineage. Victoria's father, Robert, had died in a car accident when she was just 6 years old. By all previous family precedent, the fortune should have gone to Robert's younger brother, David Kent. David Kent had always lived in his older brother's shadow. While Robert was the golden child who excelled at everything, David struggled with alcoholism, failed business ventures, and a series of costly divorces. For 15 years after Robert's death, David assumed he would eventually inherit the family fortune. He had already started making plans, taking out loans against his future inheritance, and living beyond his means. But Charles Kent had other ideas. In 2020, he'd quietly begun rewriting the family trust. Victoria's business success had impressed him far more than David's failures. She represented the future of the Kent family legacy, while David represented its potential destruction. The family dynamics were toxic. David's wife, Patricia, constantly poisoned family gatherings with passive-aggressive comments about Victoria's undeserved privileges. Their 2 sons, Victoria's cousins, openly resented her success. They'd grown up expecting to share in the family wealth, but Victoria's rise threatened their financial future. Victoria, however, remained oblivious to the brewing resentment. She genuinely loved her uncle and thought of him as a second father. She had no idea that every family dinner, every holiday celebration was filled with hidden rage and mounting desperation. On Tuesday, March 10, 2022, the family gathered in the oak-paneled library of the Kent mansion for the reading of Charles Kent's updated will. The patriarch had died peacefully in his sleep 3 days earlier, and everyone assumed they knew what the will would contain. The family lawyer, Morrison Webb, had been handling Kent family affairs for over 30 years. At exactly 3 p.m., he began reading the document that would shock everyone in that room, except Victoria, who had no idea what was coming. "To my beloved granddaughter, Victoria Alexandra Kent," Webb read, his voice steady despite the tension in the room, "I leave the entirety of my estate, including all holdings in Kent Industries, the family properties, and all financial assets, totaling approximately $2.1 billion. The silence that followed was deafening. David Kent's face went through a spectrum of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, pure rage. Patricia's sharp intake of breath could be heard across the room. Their sons looked like they'd been physically struck. Victoria herself was stunned. She'd expected to receive a portion of the inheritance, maybe enough to secure her future, but everything, the responsibility was overwhelming. "There must be some mistake," David said, his voice barely controlled. But there was no mistake. Charles Kent had been very specific. David would receive a modest trust fund, enough to live comfortably, but nothing close to the fortune he'd expected. What happened next would later be revealed through a combination of forensic evidence, security footage, and David's own confession. That Tuesday night, as the family tried to process the shocking revelation, David Kent made a decision that would destroy multiple lives. He couldn't accept that 15 years of expectations had been shattered in a single afternoon. In his twisted mind, Victoria had stolen what was rightfully his. If she was gone, the inheritance would revert to him as the next surviving relative. David had access to the mansion. He'd lived there on and off for years during his various financial difficulties. He knew Victoria's routines, her habits, her complete trust in family. Most importantly, he knew about her severe allergy to shellfish, a family secret that would become his weapon. On Wednesday evening, David volunteered to prepare Victoria's favorite meal as a celebration dinner for her new responsibilities. The family chef was off that night, and Victoria was touched by her uncle's apparent acceptance of the situation. She had no idea he was planning her murder. David crushed 6 powerful antihistamine tablets and mixed them with a shellfish extract he'd purchased earlier that day. The combination would trigger a severe allergic reaction, while the antihistamines would prevent her from waking up to use her EpiPen. It was calculated, cold-blooded, and designed to look like an accidental exposure. Victoria ate dinner with her uncle and aunt that Wednesday night, completely unaware she was consuming poison. They made small talk about the inheritance, the future of the company, and Victoria's plans. David played his role perfectly, the concerned uncle adjusting to his new reality. Around 10 p.m., Victoria began feeling unwell. She attributed it to stress from the inheritance news and went to her bedroom early. David and Patricia left the mansion around 10:30 p.m., establishing their alibi by stopping at a local bar where they were seen by multiple witnesses. By 11 p.m., Victoria was in severe distress. The allergic reaction was in full swing, but the antihistamines kept her in a drugged, semi-conscious state. She couldn't reach her EpiPen, couldn't call for help, couldn't even understand what was happening to her. The mansion's security cameras would later show no movement in Victoria's wing of the house after 11:15 p.m. She died alone, in agony, believing she was having an accidental allergic reaction. Thursday morning, Victoria's housekeeper, Maria Santos, found her body when she brought up the morning coffee. Victoria was lying in her bed, her face swollen beyond recognition from the allergic reaction. The EpiPen was on her nightstand, unused. Initially, it looked like a tragic accident. The family was devastated, publicly. David played the grieving uncle perfectly, handling funeral arrangements and media inquiries. He even gave a touching eulogy about his beloved niece and how she would have made an amazing CEO. But Detective Sarah Morrison, who caught the case, noticed inconsistencies. Victoria was extremely careful about her allergy. She carried 3 EpiPens and always checked ingredients obsessively. It seemed unlikely she would have accidentally consumed shellfish without realizing it. The toxicology report revealed the antihistamines, which didn't make sense. Why would someone with a severe shellfish allergy take antihistamines that would counteract their emergency medication? That's when the investigation shifted from accidental death to homicide. Detective Morrison began digging into the family dynamics and quickly discovered the inheritance bombshell. David's financial records showed mounting debts and several loans taken against his expected inheritance. His browser history revealed searches for shellfish allergies, antihistamine overdose, and inheritance law Connecticut. The security footage from local stores showed David purchasing both the antihistamines and the shellfish extract on Wednesday afternoon, just hours before Victoria's death. When confronted with this evidence, David's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Under interrogation, Patricia Kent broke first. She revealed that David had been planning Victoria's death since the will reading. She claimed she tried to talk him out of it, but feared for her own safety if she reported him. Her testimony provided the final pieces of the puzzle. David Kent was arrested on May 15, 2022, exactly 2 months after Victoria's murder. He was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy. During his trial, the full extent of his planning became clear. He'd been researching methods to kill Victoria for weeks, studying her routines and looking for the perfect opportunity. On November 3, 2022, David Kent was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Patricia received 10 years for conspiracy and accessory to murder. Victoria Kent's fortune was placed in a charitable trust, as specified in a codicil she'd added to her will just days before her death. She'd somehow sensed the family tension and wanted to ensure that if anything happened to her, the money would go to causes she cared about rather than to people who might have wished her harm. The Kent family name once synonymous with American success, is now forever linked to greed, betrayal, and murder. Victoria's story serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones plotting our destruction. The inheritance she never got to enjoy now funds scholarships for underprivileged students, the legacy Victoria would have wanted, rather than the one her uncle tried to steal. If this case shocked you as much as it shocked us, please like this video and subscribe to Crime Secrets for more stories about the dark truths hiding in plain sight. Because sometimes, the real monsters aren't strangers in the shadows. They're sitting across from you at the dinner table.